Are you an English learner who wonders, after all these years I spent practicing English, working on my grammar or watching videos and series, I still can't understand native speakers of English, especially when they speak very fast, or that I feel that I'm stuck with my fluency? Well, today I'm going to reveal the number one mistake that I see a lot of struggling English learners make that slows down their progress. And it's the fact that they don't listen to enough, or they don't listen attentively enough to English. And why is focusing on your listening skills so important? Because once you learn to listen, you won't only improve your listening skills, you will also be able to speak English at a more advanced level. Hey language learners, my name is Chubby. Welcome to my channel for English learners who want to learn how to make vocabulary more memorable through listening and spoken interaction. And like I said before, today's video is going to be dedicated to 7 tips to learn to listen better and try to use that skill to improve not only your listening skills, but also becoming a better communicator in English. The number one thing we have to remember is that humans, including you, are wired to learn from context and through listening. It's one of those ancient skills that has been around with us since the beginning of humanity. It's just important not to feel discouraged when things don't work out and try to keep being focused on whatever your goal is with English. And it's important to remember that listening is one of those skills we actually really need to work on, mostly because half or more than half of the time we spend communicating, including all these skills we do, writing, reading, listening and speaking. Listening is the skill that we use the most. And once you become better at listening to people speaking English to you, you will also gain the confidence you need for speaking as well, besides all the other things we're going to talk about today. But listening in general is a very complex process, and the thing is, it's very hard to teach. This is partly why you might not have been taught how to learn from listening and how to listen to English in general. The whole process of listening starts from the production of the sound, and it goes through lots of different stages until someone's brain kind of interprets what's being said. And that's one of the biggest things we have to work on. And the best way to do that is to break down what you're listening to into smaller sections. And what a lot of people do is they learn the phonology or these kind of phonics, but at the same time, according to current research, what really helps is to focus on the individual syllables or at the word level. So try to segment whatever you're listening to into smaller bits first. Be good at trying to recognize the sounds, the syllables and the words, and then you could move on to understanding phrases. We know that when we listen, we don't really listen to an individual word, we listen to a whole chunk, and that makes it so much easier for our brain to process everything because it's done in chunks. And then once you work on all these different segments, you will be able to understand complete phrases or sentences as well. And one of the best tips I can give you already is transcribing whatever you're listening to. It doesn't have to be like a long listening audio that you are trying to practice with. It could also be about 30 seconds or a minute that you take on a daily basis, sit down and try to transcribe exactly what you hear. It's okay if you don't understand every little bit, but once you write it down, you can have a look and compare it with a transcript and see what is the difference. What are the type of words, the kind of expressions that you have trouble understanding. You will see the difference, and you will also be able to be in the loop about whatever is something that needs improvement in your listening skills. What really separates the beginner listener from the advanced listener is not just the accuracy of how much exactly they understand, but it's also important to learn how to listen to faster speech and also to feel more at ease when we are listening. The only way you could do that is by trying to train your ears and work on listening practice. Point number 2 is going to uncover a huge misconception around listening skills, because when you walk into a bookshop or you check online, you will see that 95% of the material that is meant to help you with your listening skills will not teach you how to listen. It will test your listening skills. And it's really important to distinguish the two, because when you focus on why people do things and what people say, you focus on meaning. And meaning-focused listening it's not going to help you learn to listen better. It will keep testing whether you understand something or not. So just imagine when you come across some of these typical examples of like true, false, or not given, or you need to choose from A, B, C, or D, how is it going to be useful in real life listening situations? All these kind of things are just focusing on understanding how the learner understands the language, testing their skills instead of teaching them how to listen and how to use listening, which is very important for a language learner, as a model of the language. We are listening to materials, to spoken English, because we want to see how the speakers of English use different expressions, how they try to express themselves in certain situations. And you can do this by focusing on how things are being said instead of what is being said, which is again a more meaning focused one. So try to be a bit more structure focused. Why is this so important? Because when you learn from context, from real context, you will also be able to gain that confidence you need to speak. And a lot of learners struggle because they forget certain words that they want to use when they speak. There is a video about the whole thing in more detail if you want to check this out, but this is a way for you to see how context can also help you become a better and a more fluent speaker. Focus on learning from context and trying to use it as a source of all the information you could use to become more fluent. All those phrases and expressions you could basically steal and grab out of that text and try to use it to become a better or more fluent speaker. Remember that improving your listening skills is not about mastery, because eventually you will never get to a point when you will understand what is exactly being said in every single second. So it's important to use listening to get used to how the language is used, to see expressions and how speakers of English express themselves. Use it as a model instead of always focusing on comprehension skills. Once you get this, I'm sure your listening skills will also skyrocket. Just remember that if it's a bit hard for you and you don't understand too much of it, there's no point listening to something 5% of which you have confidence in understanding. So use a script. Once you listen to it once, you really try to see how much you understand. Use this transcript to check how much you understand, compare it with it, but then try to put that transcript away and go back to the listening. I'm sure you will be able to understand more because you kind of see the written form already. You will have experience with some of the words and phrases or grammar structures mentioned in that listening. Which leads us to point 3, which is that a lot of people are trying to focus on understanding everything and they say, I don't understand anything. Well, I'm sure there are parts that you understand, and telling yourself that you don't understand everything will not help you become a better listener. And it's important to remember that when it comes to listening, your brain is a very smart organ. We all know that. Your brain will naturally fill in some of those gaps. So once you don't understand a word or an expression, when you are speaking to a person and they make a face or they try to create some sort of gesture, you will basically get what they talk about. Communication is so much bigger than just understanding through listening. So your brain can do that, or it could also help you fill in the gaps based on all the contextual information. So if you have trouble understanding a short grammar word, then because you know the grammar, you will be able to kind of unfold what is being said without really focusing on the individual words. So a more structure-based focus on some of these expressions that you're listening to, learning from context again, trying to improve your grammar from real context will actually help you fill in those gaps that you have trouble understanding every time. And something in connection with focus is the fact that, well, we live in this 21st century where a lot of people just lack the concentration that they should have in order to listen more attentively. And this can happen because of social media. We live at a time, at least at the time of the recording of this video, where TikTok, the view times, the number of minutes watched on TikTok have actually surpassed the number of minutes watched on YouTube. So people prefer to consume content that is short and quick, and they can move on from one to another. But the problem is that is that it will train our brain to listen to a shorter amount of time. And as a language learner, we know how important attention is. I'm planning out a whole video on this, how important it is for us to use our attention, our noticing skills, to learn from whatever we listen to, whatever we read, in order to save time and make the language learning journey a shorter one than it would be if we just spend it with lack of attention and lack of concentration. So it's important to try to move away from social media. You don't have to learn from a YouTube video or a TikTok video. You can also use real authentic movies, or just go out there and speak with people and understand what they are trying to say instead of focusing on these short 10-second videos. But in order for you to pay more attention to whatever you're listening to, you can also give yourself a reason. So if you know what the topic is, if you know you're listening to how squirrels are running around in a park in your area, then you can ask yourself a question to make you more attentive. Okay, so why am I listening to this? Because I really want to find out what those squirrels are doing in that park. Asking questions to yourself. Why do you think teachers keep asking questions to their students in class? Because it increases their concentration, right? It can help you focus more. Point number 4 is going to be about varied listening. We need to change up what we listen to, mostly because when you listen to textbook material, they are mostly going to be audio recordings that were recorded in a studio, which means everything is clear. There's a lot of things, a lot of features that aren't included in a studio recorded audio that will be there when you listen to someone in real life. That is called interpersonal listening. So it's really important to keep changing up what we listen to, not only because there are 100,000 accents in English, all kinds of varieties of English that we have to be better at listening to. You might be struggling with a specific accent, not because that accent is strange or weird. There's a lot of accent bias around the world, we know that, but because you simply aren't used to it, right? But if you spend 5 years in a specific place, you will eventually get used to that accent if you really want to understand what people say. And it's also really important to change up the kind of materials you're using to focus on your listening skills. So instead of just only exclusively focusing on learning from series or podcasts, you could also use platforms like Clubhouse, which is an amazing social media platform. The Global English Cove, which is one of the English-speaking clubs on Clubhouse, is welcoming you as well to be a speaker, either on stage or to be in the audience, trying to listen to a variety of accents from all around the world, because the club's mission is to provide talks, rooms about different things in life to all speakers of English, international speakers of English, to get used to each other's accent and also use that platform as a way to connect to people. So go ahead and check out the first link here. I'm going to leave it here, and make sure you come along to some of our talks as well. Besides Clubhouse, you could also embrace the power of live listening. For example, when you listen to a radio talk, I believe they still exist in 2021. Plus, there's also for your opportunity to call somebody to order food or anything else, or to go out there and go for a webinar on Zoom, or to just simply find ways to go to a conversation class on Zoom as well. We live in the 21st century. There's literally no reason why we shouldn't take advantage of all these opportunities. And don't forget that the main reason we're doing all this is for you to be able to carry out interpersonal listening as well, meaning that you need to go out there and listen to people. So my advice for this point is that try to slowly break away from relying on transcripts and relying on subtitles on movies as well, because eventually if you want to become an advanced user, an advanced speaker of English, you need to get used to that, because there is literally no subtitles in real life either. And you will see that if you work on gradually breaking away from those scripts, your listening skills will also improve a lot. Many English learners who keep asking, how can I understand native English speakers, tend to get a bit frustrated when it comes to listening and prefer to avoid it, just going back to a book, studying in their notebooks, or swiping through social media content. This is one of the worst things they can do, because eventually, again, the amount of exposure is going to be important. What often happens is that our brain gets overloaded, and it's such a stressful situation for many people. They get nervous about things as well. But remember, the way you feel about English will affect the result as well. It's really important to build up that what we call self-efficacy, meaning that you need to believe that you can do it, right? Because that's the only way you will do all these hard things as well. Make sure that you base your decisions on not how you feel about listening, but on the fact that this is a skill that is going to work wonders once you become better at it. Remember that whatever is harder for us to do, it just means we are learning. So look out for challenges. It's especially going to be important when you become a more advanced speaker. If you want to find out more about the difference between what an advanced speaker does and what a stuck learner does, then have a look at this video right here and find out more, including things about listening as well. This relates to my point number 6, which has a lot to do with the intermediate plateau and a lot of people feeling stuck with their listening and their fluency skills as well. Just remember that when you keep challenging yourself, it's going to be so much more of a learning experience. So it's important to put ourselves into situations we don't really feel comfortable with, talking about topics, listening to topics that we don't feel so comfortable with, because eventually when you want to become a more advanced speaker, you also have to have a wider range of vocabulary and also be able to understand more complex language as well, right? There's lots of different complex grammar structures we have to be able to understand in order to keep up with what a fast English speaker is trying to use. And of course, you can use all those audio materials that you listen to learn vocabulary and more complex grammar from. This is how we grow. This is how we become more advanced, by constantly pushing and trying to do things we might not want to do, but we need to do in order to reach fluency. And the last point is going to be about how you can improve your memory. We know what an incredibly important part your memory plays in language learning, and it's especially important when it comes to your listening skills. What most of the people struggle with is trying to keep up with the speed of the speaker, right? Because sometimes our working memory, which is what some people call your short-term memory, sometimes can't keep all that information for as long as the speaker would speak, right? So the speakers use a faster way of telling you information than what you can actually absorb and understand. Keep asking yourself questions, because when you ask yourself a question, what am I listening to? Why is this important to me? Or how can I apply this to my life? Your attention span and your focus will also increase. Besides, if you listen to a recording, make sure that you listen to it a few times, because when you listen to it more times, you will be able to spot different things and you can focus on other aspects of the language. Sometimes you could just focus on pronunciation or the grammar structures used when they talk about a specific topic. I really hope that some of these English listening practice hot tips have given you some ideas on how to understand native speakers or more advanced fast speakers of English. Will also help you improve your listening skills. Just don't forget that never be scared of listening to English, because that's the worst thing you can do to yourself. It's such an important skill that even if you're scared of it, if you can just do it for 5 minutes and gradually develop your skills until you become truly good at listening. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you getting here. If you'd like to see some similar videos on these topics of how to become a fluent speaker with the help of working on your speaking skills, improving your listening skills, or expanding your vocabulary, leave a comment with some of your ideas and give the channel a subscribe. I'd love to help you more with my future tips as well. So any future video ideas are more than welcome. Let me know what you think about the video, any sort of contribution to this channel, whether it's a comment or a thumbs up, would be really appreciated. Thank you so much again, and hope to see you in another video. But also how can you this up? Vocabulary memorable, how to make more points. Welcome to my channel, a channel dedicated to how is it being said. No, that's the exact opposite. It will test and that's number. They're going to import the from this tip section is learn from, I don't even know what I'm saying.